right, welcome back. So we're gonna knock out some more API. Gonna do some more copying from the slides, but hopefully you take some time and you read the slides and you kind of understand what's there, and you think about how you could extend this to your own work, right? Um, so the next one we're gonna do is read. So let's just go ahead and copy read in here, and then we'll talk about it some. So I put read on the page. The first thing you notice about read is that it is a query method. A query method is very different than a method. So a method takes in a movie quote, sends out a movie quote. That's what it does. A query method actually takes in fields, and then under the hood, a query is made for you. And then when your code is called, it gives you, hey, here's a query. And then inside your code, you can do whatever you want with the query. If you want to filter it or limit the data somehow. What you send out is also a query. And under the hood, they take care of converting that query into actual objects for you. So it's kind of funny how much is done for you. This is the thing about frameworks. You have to just understand them. So it takes in like parameters from the JavaScript, converts those parameters into a query. And then what you have to send out is also a query. If you want to do nothing with it, that's okay. And that's actually what we're doing here. So we're passed in a query. We have to pass out a query. We don't need to modify it because the data is all global. So we just pass it back out. So the annotation is kind of the more important part. So it says query method. It's got a path. Our path here is /list. Not sure why I picked the name list. It's a fine name, I suppose, but it's what I picked for the path. It's what I picked for the name. It's a get method. And then with query methods, you say, what query fields do you want? There's a couple built-in query fields, and I've got those shown here. So there's limit, order, and page token. These are actually saving you a lot of work. So whenever you do like, hey, give me movie quotes, you always want to say, hey, how many do you want, right? If you don't give a limit, it actually makes the limit just 10, which might surprise you because that's a pretty low number. That's the point of Ajax, right? So you want to do lots of little quick calls, right? So they limit you to 10 by default. You can increase it up to 50, but if you try to go over 50, they'll just say, no, max is 50, right? So you give it a limit. You give it an order. What order do you want these results to be in? So ours is going to be the negative of last touch date time. And then there's also this page token field, which is really neat. So they're going to give you like 30 quotes. And a page token. And if you want the next 30, you just have to send that page token with the request, and we'll remember the query. So it's all saved on the back end, all under the hood. And we'll just give you the next chunk for that page token. Really slick. Like I said in the first video that you can make JSON APIs on your own, but with tools like this, you wouldn't want to, right? So you would always want to use their tools. So I really like that a lot. And then the method is just completely trivial. So let's just go ahead and test it out here. So we've got our API Explorer. What I like to do is I like to go back to kind of like the top level page and click refresh. And then when I come back in, you can see now I've got an insert and I've also got a list. You can pass no parameters if you want. So you can just say execute without auth, and it'll give you some number of quotes. It formats it to where it gives you items, and you can click it apparently and shrink them. Items and a next page token. I can then expand my items. If you were to count them, there should be 10 items here because we have plenty of items here, so we're going to get the default of 10. If you wanted to change that number, let's say you just wanted 2, you could do the request again, and then here you get just 2 items, right? So it gave me Pride of the Yankees and Wizard of Oz. Other things you can do and probably should do is you should probably put it in order. So last touch, date, time. You do have to actually type it there, sorry. And if you click this, it'll be the most recent 2, which is my first Endpoints movie, go Endpoints, and then here's the Titanic one that I had added those exclamation points to. So that's kind of cool. If then you wanted to get the next like 2 in my example here, you could copy the page token, and you could pass that into the next request. And if I say execute with OAuth, this time it's going to give me Wizards of Oz and Dirty Dancing. And if you look here, those are actually numbers 3 and numbers 4. So you can see we've actually implemented this with very, very little code, which is really cool. And it's got all these little advanced features, which I love. Let's just go ahead and knock out the others as well. They're not going to be hard. It's going to be pretty easy to do. This next one is for edit. So we're going to modify the create one and make it into an actual edit. So what I've done here is I've just given you the code for the new method. So it's actually going to kind of blow away the old one, right? So I'm just going to paste the new stuff here. And so you can see that it's already kind of got the return, it's already kind of got the put, and then this create, it's kind of like inside the other one. So I'll just kind of clean up the tabs here, and there we should be all set. So let's look at this. So there's really only like 3 new lines, right? So those are the only 3 new lines. And what this says is if request.from data store. This is a Python property, so there's no method call in here. It's actually just a property. Comically, when you type it, it wants to autocomplete to a function call, but that's not accurate, which is kind of funny. And what happens is, under the hood, this is where you have to understand what happens under the hood again. If you pass up an entity key, it will actually, before it even calls your thing, it will actually get it from the data store. And it will take those JSON fields you put in and it will actually replace them over the ones that are on the data store. So the thing it gives you here is something pulled from the data store with the query, with the different fields replaced based on what came in. So it kind of turns out that what they gave you was already perfect, right? So it's already what you want exactly. So what I chose to do is I chose to say movie quote equals request, and then I do a put down here, no matter which path you came in on. So let's try this guy out. So now we've added edit. So let's go over to our API. So I'm going to go kind of like to this top level page. Nothing got added because it was just a modification of insert. And so what's going to happen now is whenever I have a movie quote, so I'll tell you what, I'll do a limit of 1 and an order of last touch date time. And I was just going to type this just so I could get an entity key, right? So here's an entity key. So this is my first Endpoints movie. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into insert and I'm going to actually pass in an entity key, right? You could have also gotten an entity key by doing one insert and then just copying it, but I went ahead and just copied it from the list there. So my first Endpoints movie now edited, right? So I can click on execute without OAuth, and you can see it changed there. The real test is when we reload this page, will this one go away and get replaced by the new one, right? So when I hit refresh, it should now just say now edited. Cool, so edit works. So the big thing about edit is that it didn't make 2 of them, it actually just edited that one. And the way we did it is we just passed in the entity key, and with the code that we added, it all just worked, right? So it's kind of nice. Let's knock out delete real quick. So we kind of scroll down here in the slides, and here's delete. So I'm going to go and copy delete. I'm just going to paste it below the query one. Delete is again a method, so it's kind of like the insert one. So a movie quote comes in, movie quote goes out. One thing that's a little bit different about this one is that we don't need the whole movie quote. We really just need the entity key. So you can actually specify request fields. Request fields are a tuple. One interesting thing about Python is that if you want to make a tuple with only one item, you have a trailing comma. So that's not a typo, and it's actually critically important. That comma makes it a tuple instead of just being surrounded by parentheses, right? And then the little trick that I do that's different here is I say on my path movie quote slash delete, I say slash entity key in these mustaches. What that does is that actually moves it from being a parameter that's in like the body of the message right into the URL. It also makes it a required field. The name, I just make movie quote dot delete. And then one little trick here, this is optional. I chose to do this. I chose to make the HTTP method be delete. I liked it because it feels more elegant. You could have totally used git or post for that matter. Probably post would be the most appropriate because it's actually a modification. I chose to say delete here just because I could. It happens to all work out fine, and it makes me feel like really elegant. This one, again, so it makes sure that it's from the data store. If somehow it's not in the data store, we just raise an exception. We say, hey, movie quote not found. The deletion step is very easy. You just have to take the key. So we just say request.key. You say .delete. That's how you delete something in App Engine with the data store. And then what you've got to do is kind of funny. You have to return a movie quote. So we actually make a new movie quote that's just kind of a placeholder nonsense. I made the quote say deleted, just so I had something to do, right? So let's give it a go. So here we've got an entity key on our screen handy. So I'm just going to make that be on my clipboard. I come back to this screen, I hit refresh. I've now got my delete method here. I pass in my entity key. I say execute without OAuth. You can see that this time it did a delete. And the entity key is actually just part of the URL. There's no body with a delete, so it's just part of the URL. And it responded with a OK, meaning success, and a quote of deleted. And so now this guy should go away when I click refresh. So I click refresh, and it's gone. So there we go. We've gone ahead and implemented our API. What you should do next is you should go ahead and upload this guy to your deployed version. Oops, a little typo I had done here. I forgot my D and my S part of my username. I just put my last name. It's going to cause a couple minor problems. I'm going to lose all my data. But once you get it uploaded, you can go to your deployed version and try it out. It does take a little bit to finish the deploy. So let me just go ahead and go to mine here. I'll just get ready. So fisherds-mq endpoints.appspot.com. You'll notice that it did the normal deploy, and then after the normal deploy, it's doing this like endpoints deploy. So once you're using endpoints, it does take a little longer to deploy, but it's really not too bad. There, mine finished. Great. So now that it's finished, I can go try it out. So I go to my app. So my app is here. I have a bunch of data in mine because I've done this once before. You will not have any data, so you'll have to go to like the /import data option, right? I've got plenty of data. To try it out on the deployed version, it's the same thing. You say _AH API Explorer, and you can go through and you can try all these same things again. So you can create movie quotes here. So I'm just going to make a lame one. I'm just going to say prod movie. Prod quote stands for production. There's a minor difference when you execute it here. If you look really closely, you can see that it's got the movie, the quote, the last touch date time, the entity key, and then there's actually two new fields in prod. There's kind. So what kind is it? I don't find kind useful in any way, shape, or form, but it is on there in prod. And then there's this e-tag thing. E-tag can be useful. It is a unique tag that says if the data has changed since the last time you did anything, right? So the nice thing is let's say you're doing a query for like get quotes, and then like somebody clicks refresh and you do another query. If the e-tag is the same as the last time you did it, you know that nothing's changed. So that's the only difference on the prod version. And then if we were to go to the production version homepage, you can see that we should have that prod quote and prod movie. Keep in mind that if you have, if it was the first time you were deploying it, it might take a while because you might have to actually wait for your indices to build. You can always watch the indices build by going to console.cloud.google.com. And then if you go into data store, which is right here, and then you go into indexes, you can see if your indexes have finished building yet. It takes a couple minutes for them to do the first time, so just kind of keep that in mind if it's the first time you deployed it. All right, so that's all we've got for the back end. We've actually finished the back end API. That was easy. Now we just need to make a web client. All right, see you next time. Bye.